Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're all having a good week. If not, the weekend's nearly here. Hang tough. Anthony Yarde. Let's talk a bit about this proposed fight with Artur Beterbiev. This, of course, would be Yarde's second tilt at a world title fight. And most people that I've spoken to and corresponded with are saying Yarde has absolutely no chance of winning. It's a mismatch and so on. I don't agree that he has no chance. I really don't. He's an athletic guy. He hits hard, and I've seen much bigger upsets than that. Beterbiev clearly is the favourite with good cause, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But is he unbeatable? Can Yarde not take him out? No, Beterbiev's been on the floor. Maybe he's struggling to make the weight. It's possible. Getting older, harder to shed the weight. No, it's feasible that a hard-punching athletic guy like Yarde could give him problems and maybe beat him. So that's not really the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to study why people think Yarde is such an outsider. And I think it boils down to the fact of the way his career has been brought along, because his career has been, I think, it's almost a tragedy the way his career has been brought on. As things stand, the only person that Yarde has fought who could ever be considered world class, and was at the time past his best, and I won't say shot, he wasn't shot, but he'd been stopped before, he'd been beaten before. That, of course, was Sergey Kovolev. Yarde fought him in Russia, gave him a good fight, almost had him out of there in the 6th round, emptied the tank, says Tunde Ajayi. And then, of course, Yarde couldn't get rid of him, so he had half of the fight left, and he just ran out of steam and got knocked out by a jab. Now, Kovalev, 11 weeks later, was it? 12 weeks later, was knocked out by Canelo Alvarez, naturally a much smaller man. So you could say, well, this is Kovalev was there for the taking, and probably Yarde's lack of experience, lack of being battle hardened, of fighting good men on the up. Suddenly he made that quantum leap to world level, fought Kovalev, and if he'd only had a bit more experience and a bit more, a few more experiences that put him in positions of crisis, or a few more 12-rounders where he was more confident of his engine, if he'd only had that and much more to prepare for Kovalev over the preceding fights, however many it was, he would have stood a much better chance of beating a Kovalev who was there for the taking, as Canelo later proved only a few months after that. Well, now we have a situation where Yarde is about to make another quantum leap up to fight Beterbiev. And what's Yarde done since fighting Kovalev? Well, he's done virtually nothing. He's been inactive for long periods. He fought Deck Spellman and stopped him in 6. Deck is probably an English title level fighter. He fought Lyndon Arthur twice. He lost the first one on points. You can argue that he won it, but he did technically lose it, and it was a close fight. Is Lyndon Arthur world class? I think he's European class, and he may prove me wrong and get to world level, beat a few world level fighters. He may do. I have my doubts personally, but I'm not going to write him off. Good luck to the guy. But as things stand, he's not a world class fighter. And then at the weekend we had Stephanie Koikov, who fought Yarde and lasted 3 rounds and essentially quit. He gave it a go for maybe a round and a half, and then when the going got tough, and it dawned on him that he was too small, didn't have the power, he wasn't physically stronger than Yarde, wasn't as athletic. He just took a beating, and then he thought, the hell with this. And he looked glaringly smaller than Yarde, who is a big heavyweight, big light heavyweight. The one advantage Beterbiev probably won't have over Yarde is size, because he is a big man himself for the weight. But if they both make the weight in terms of physical strength, Yarde can possibly match Beterbiev. But he's proved absolutely nothing since the Kovalev defeat. He's beaten no one of world class. If you go through his record, he just hasn't beaten. I don't know. I'm struggling to think of, apart from Lyndon Arthur, has he fought any good quality European level fighters? It's just it's just terrible, really terrible. It's such a great shame how Yarde has been brought along. He's been brought along so badly. And it's strange because Frank Warren promotes him, and Frank normally does that British, Commonwealth, European route and then on to world level, like he did more recently with Billy Joe Saunders, and he has great success with that. Now, Beterbiev, on the other hand, of course, as we know, do I have to go through it? He's beaten, in his last fight, he beat Joe Smith Jr. in only 2 rounds. Smith Jr. is a good fighter, world-class, proven, has beaten some good men. Before that, Marcus Brown got stopped in 9 or 10, I think it was 9 rounds. There was a unification fight that Beterbiev had, and that was against Govodnik, Alexander Govodnik, I think his name was. I can never pronounce the name. That was in 2019, but he knocked him out in 10. This guy's faced good people. I mean, put it this way, his 6th, 7th fight, he faced Tavoris Cloud, a former fighter, a former world champion. That ended up being Cloud's final fight, I think. Good quality opposition. So he's jumped up from an illustrious amateur career to fight world-class fighters and to dominate them, and he's undefeated. Yarde, don't think he had a big amateur career, did he? He kind of jumped in at the deep end. Clearly, he's big, powerful, hits hard, but the comparison in experience, the comparison in, and there is no substitute for life experience or for experience in the ring. The comparison between the resume, the comparison between proven over the distance, over the 12-round distance, the comparison between how to deal with world-class fighters, how to knock out world-class fighters, how to deal with their strengths and contain them. And all of this, there is no comparison. All of this is weighted in, several leagues in favour of Artur Beterbiev. And if only Yarde, with his natural talent, had been brought along more sensibly, in incremental steps, like I say, British, Commonwealth, European, and then world. If only he had done that with him, he'd have a so much better chance of beating Beterbiev. Now, he may have done that, and he still might lose to Beterbiev, but he wouldn't be this massive underdog. People quite rightly say, who's he beat? Lyndon Arthur, that's about it. A European level fighter. Who else has he beaten? You ever heard of any of his opponents? Maybe you have if you're a hardcore fan. Maybe you know a little bit about them. Can you break down their records? No. But you know who Joe Smith Jr. is. You know who Govodnik was. He's retired now. Even Tavoris Cloud, who I mentioned earlier, you know that he twice fought Bernard Hopkins, and that was a very early contest for Beterbiev, and he won it in only 2 rounds. There's just no comparison at all. Callum Johnson's a pretty good fighter. Maybe he's not world level. He wasn't world level, but he's certainly good European level fighter. He had Beterbiev on the floor, and Beterbiev gets up, goes back to work, no problem. He beats him, knocks him out. There's just such a wasted opportunity of a career for Anthony Yarde, who's only had 25 fights anyway. I say that, but of course Beterbiev's only had 18. It'd be all 18 knockouts, 18 wins, 18 knockouts, no defeats, no draws. But Beterbiev is, he's had an illustrious amateur career. Now, let's compare, for example, just as an example, let's compare another fighter who was fast-tracked, who didn't go down the traditional British, Commonwealth, European route, but who tried to jump into world class straight away. David Haye. We'll have a look at David Haye, just as a comparison with Yarde. Okay, so David Haye, he turns pro. He did have a good amateur career, very good amateur career. Straight away, he's fighting, he fights the standard sort of lower level guys. And then he gets thrown in, I think it was his 11th or 12th fight. He beats up, by the way, he beat Arthur Williams, who was I think I'm right in saying was a former champ, former light heavyweight champ. Was it cruiserweight? Cruiserweight champ. He beats him in 3 rounds. And then he faces Carl Thompson. And Thompson is one of the most exciting fighters of the last 20 years. Kill or be killed, win, lose or draw. He was Mr. Excitement. I saw him in the flesh, sat ringside, wildly exciting fighter. Up and down like a horse draws he was. He was, win or lose, he would get knocked out or he would knock you out. Okay. He fights Carl Thompson fights Haye. This was in 2004. Haye beats the crap out of him for 3 rounds, maybe. And then he runs out of gas. He empties the tank. Ring any bells? Carl Thompson stops him in the 5th round. So Haye, a massive, shock, an absolute shock that was at the time. The big golden boy Haye has been beaten, not just beaten, but stopped in only 5 rounds. And that was a 12 round. It was for the IBO cruiserweight title for what that's worth. But it was 12 round. It was 12 round distance. Now, what does Haye do? Does he then beat up a load of bums? I don't like that word, but a load of lower level guys, should we say, and then jump into world class again? No, he doesn't. He fights some lower guys, but they weren't complete puddings. He beat Gary Delaney, who could go a few rounds. Glenn Kelly stopped him in 2 rounds. And then he actually had a European title fight with a guy called he won the European title off Alexander Gurov, and that was a 1-round blowout. And he defended it a couple of times, and one of those was against a guy called Ismail Abdul. And if you look at this guy's record, this guy went on to be a journeyman, and he ended up with something like 59 wins, 37 defeats, 3 draws, a total journeyman. But he was, in his 37 defeats, I think it was, he was only ever stopped once. And he took Haye in a European title fight, the distance, a tough fight. And then, after that, Haye goes in, again, it's another European title fight, EBU title fight, with Giacab Fragomeni. And Italian fighter, very tough. Fragomeni, 21 wins, no defeats, undefeated. And he stops Fragomeni in 9 rounds. But I think it was in that fight he suffered a very bad cut. So he had another crisis that he had to go through. Now, why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because basically David Haye was becoming battle-hardened, having jumped in against Carl Thompson and got done in 5 rounds, run out of gas, fought like hell, like it was a sprint. It was a 12-round fight and he got stopped. He then learned from that and built and built and built. After Fragomeni faced a heavyweight, Thomas Bonin, who had 37 wins and 1 defeat. The 1 defeat was to Audley Harrison, actually, in I think it was 9 rounds. And Haye did Bonin in a round. Then he went back down to cruiserweight and he faced Jean-Marc Mormec in Paris. Mormec, naturalised Frenchman. And Haye was on the floor, again, early on, down in round 4, I think it was. And he was in trouble. And Mormec, the hometown favourite, Haye got up. Mormec, the hometown favourite, tried to put it on him, but Haye survived because he'd learned how to survive mentally as well as physically. He soaked up all that experience, so when he faced adversity, he knew what to do. And he ended up knocking out Mormec in 7 rounds and winning, it was WBA and WBC cruiserweight titles. And he then went in with Enzo Maccarinelli, got rid of him in 2 rounds. That was for the WBO. So he had 3 of the belts. Then he moved up to heavyweight. Monty Barrett, John Ruiz. Of course, he fought Nikolai Valuev and won a WBA title. But the point I'm making is he moved in steps. Having lost that early fight, having jumped in too deep too soon, he then progressed, got some experience, did the 12-round distance a few times, faced some adversity, cut against Fragomeni, floored against Mormec, but he knew what he was doing. And suddenly it all came together, and he was a very good cruiserweight champion, and he held a version of the world title at heavyweight. Yarde hasn't done that. Yarde has just let it slide. He's jumped up too quickly against Kovalev, and he's done absolutely nothing in order to prepare himself for Beterbiev. So I think it's a great shame about Yarde and his career. I think Yarde has a lot of ability, and it's just not been maximised. How much of it is his fault? How much is Tunde Ajayi's fault? I don't know. And of course, I'm going to look very silly having made this video if Yarde goes and chins Beterbiev. But it's not impossible. But I make him a rank underdog. I really, really do. And it's a shame because even though he may have still been an underdog, if he'd had the right fights, if he'd been brought along correctly, and again, I'll use the phrase battle-hardened, he could have done some damage. He could have, he could have beaten Kovalev on that night. He could be having maybe a unification with Beterbiev now. But anyway, I think it's a shame. I think Yarde's career is how not to bring a prospect on to world level, how not to do it. But there we go. Anyway, let me know what you think. Maybe you think I'm talking nonsense. You leave your comments below. I don't mind. Thanks for watching the video. Been quite a long one, this. Like the video if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. That would be brilliant. Help the channel out. And hey, like I say, leave your comments below. I always enjoy reading your comments. Sometimes I don't get a chance to answer all of them, but I do enjoy reading them, and thanks for leaving them. We'll speak again soon. The weekend's on its way. Take care. Bye for now.